Thank you. Enough, enough, enough. Thank you. Please. All I can say is in watching that video, I didn't look a day younger back in 2002. Matt, thank you for those kind words. They were so over the top, as is this whole evening. But it was great, and you could continue it. I loved every minute of it. Let's get serious. And it was great to read that New York Post story about our health work that you mentioned, especially in a newspaper that once featured a picture of my head on a turkey's body on the front page. I have no recollection of what I ever did to annoy Mr. Murdoch that much, but even Mr. Murdoch would agree that today things are a lot better in New York City and in America and around the world because of people like you who've really stood up and made a difference. You know, when you want change, people criticize. It becomes a blood sport in the press. But if you know you're right, eventually the rest of the world is going to come along, and they're going to look back. And even if they don't, if you look in the mirror and see a person that you like, if you see in the mirror a person who you think has changed the world for the better, whether it's one person you helped or millions of people you helped, you sleep a lot better that night and you're a lot more happier. So thank you very much for all that you do. You should be getting this award, not me. Now, let me thank everyone here for coming out to support the campaign for tobacco-free kids. They really are making a big difference in people's lives. And Myers really deserves our thanks. So you are the greatest. Thank you very much. Matt is one of the real leaders in the global fight to reduce tobacco use, and he is a big reason why we're making more and more progress every single day. And it comes in fits and starts. If you think about it, nothing's happened for the last few months, and then lo and behold, we wake up and Beijing is doing two things which nobody ever expected. One is putting a smoking ban in, and number two, they started to close coal-fired power plants. The two things that you can do to help people's lives. And Matt, I think, is the first one to say that everyone on his staff who does all the hard work really deserve a big round of applause for you. They're the ones that make a difference. Now, as many of you know, this is an issue which is important to me. It's important to Diana and my family. It's important to everybody that works at Bloomberg. In fact, it's important to all the customers of Bloomberg LP, because almost all the profits of Bloomberg LP go into Bloomberg Philanthropies. And that's where the money comes from for us to make the world a better place. So you can do good even by just doing business. And if any of you don't have a Bloomberg terminal, I would love you to sign up today. Fighting tobacco, seriously, has been one of our foundation's single largest investments, and it was a major focus of our administration, as you know, in New York City. And we've been lucky to have the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids as a partner in that work, along with some of the other great organizations here tonight. In the years that we have been working together, the momentum in the fight against tobacco has shifted dramatically, and that's something to really celebrate tonight. We shouldn't rest on our laurels. We still have a long ways to go. In spite of having all of North America and South America and all of Western Europe and a big chunk now of Asia and Africa smoke-free. Sadly, this year, the tobacco companies will sell more cigarettes this year than they ever did in any other 1 year in history. Think about that. Enormous progress, and yet they're selling more cigarettes. Who are they selling the cigarettes to? They are selling the cigarettes to the poor and uneducated that don't know what's happening to their lives. Shame on them. What a disgrace. But having said all of that, it just shows that we can still have in front of us the opportunity to make an even bigger difference in the future than what we've made in the past. The momentum against the fight in tobacco continues. When we first proposed making New York's bars and restaurants smoke-free, many people called us crazy, and some used more colorful terms than crazy. This was New York City, after all. The critics said we would kill the restaurant and bar business and that tourism would stop coming. And I do remember giving a parade on Staten Island, and I got an awful lot of one-finger waves. Only in New York. It's one of the great things about being New York's mayor. But in fact, just the opposite, what people had predicted happened. The smoking ban was the best thing that ever happened to the hospitality and tourism industries, and that helped create an awful lot of jobs. I remember the governor of New Jersey, Christy Whitman, who's really a nice woman and was a good governor of New Jersey, called me right after the smoking ban and said, "Thank you so much. Everybody in New York is going to now come over to New Jersey every night to go to our bars and restaurants." About 2 months later, Christy, to her credit, called me and said, "I just want you to know I'm going to propose a smoking ban in New Jersey." And I said, this is a true story. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because my son has not spent one night in New Jersey since the smoking ban went in." And if you think about it, that makes sense, because only 20% of the people smoked, and so most people have a big vested interest in getting the other 20%, well, 80% don't smoke, getting the other 20% that do smoke to stop. And it's why a lot more cities and countries have taken similar steps. It is the right thing for public health. It also, fortunately, happens to be the right thing for business, and that is one of the things that really makes a difference. And I just had the honor of sitting next to the Chief Communications Officer, is that the title? President of the foundation of CVS. And if there's any company that has stood up, it is CVS. And incidentally, if you want to vote with your feet, next time you go to a drugstore, just pick the CVS store. And it wouldn't hurt if you went, time out. What you got to do is you got to convince other companies as well that it would be in their interest to do so. So if you go to a CVS store, walk up to ask the cashier, who's the manager, and just walk up and say, "Let me tell you why I am here. I'm here because of your corporate policy that you care for the people that you serve." That will get back to the chairman, but that will also, of CVS, but that'll also get back to other companies, that it's in their interest to do the same thing. So just do it. And incidentally, when everybody said, "Well, you can do it in New York, but you can't do it anyplace else," you're never going to get people to stop smoking in Ireland and in France and in Italy. It's part of the culture. And it turned out that it wasn't part of the culture that they had to have. And as a matter of fact, they knew, just like the rest of us did, that it's in their interest to stop. They saw how well it worked in New York City. And in New York City, if you go into a bar and restaurant and ask anybody that works there, or anybody that patronizes those organizations, they'd say, "It's the best thing that ever happened to me because my health is better, best thing that ever happened to the company that I work for, because we don't make any money when people smoke. We do make money when they buy food and booze." And so it works in bars and restaurants, and it also keeps their employees a lot happier, as well as all their patrons. As Matt pointed out, smoking rates have dropped dramatically back when we were in City Hall by more than 30%, and that far outpaced the national average, and it wasn't just because of the smoking ban. We actually knew that if we attacked the problem from many angles, we could make a difference, so we raised taxes on tobacco products. We created programs to help people quit smoking. We launched graphic and ad campaigns to educate people to the dangers of smoking, and we did annual surveys to make sure that what we was doing was working. And we did that all in New York City, and Dr. Tom Frieden is with us today. Tom, raise your hand. Wait. He was our city's commissioner of the Department of Health, and I never forgave him when he left to go to CDC. I'll forgive him for that, but he deserves a lot of credit, as does Dr. Kelly Henning, who worked with Tom to lead the health department's tobacco work in New York City. And now Kelly is doing a fantastic job running the public health program at Bloomberg Philanthropies. And that program, yes? Kelly, raise your hand too. Kelly and her outstanding team really did a great thing for us. I also wanted to thank the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The success that we saw in New York is spreading around the world. Last week or a couple weeks ago, as Matt mentioned, Beijing is becoming one of the largest cities to go smoke-free. And that, if you think about it, that's really an enormous victory because China has the world's largest number of smokers, and the Chinese government owns the cigarette companies. But what has happened in China? They also incidentally announced that they're closing their coal-fired power plants in Beijing. And the answer is that the public really does have a say. No matter what kind of government you have, governments exist only with the acquiescence of the majority of the people. And when the people say, we don't want to breathe air we can see, we don't want to drink water that is colored, we want clean air and clean water and an environment where our kids can grow up healthier, and governments respond. And you see that government in China working, and if it happens in Beijing, it will probably happen in the rest of that country, which is an enormous country and has a big impact on other parts of the world. Same thing, who would have thought that Russia has a 100% smoke-free policy? Who would have thought that Egypt would pass a 40% tax on tobacco products? Who would have ever imagined that more than 24 other countries who've implemented comprehensive systems to track who's smoking would implement comprehensive systems to track who's smoking so they can help more people quit? And whoever would have ever thought that 1.7 billion people, about 1 of every 4 people on the planet, would be protected by tobacco control laws? No one did. But we believed it was possible, and thanks to the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, our partners in this work, and of course Bloomberg Philanthropy's incredible public health team, it's all happening. Matt mentioned the fact that life expectancy in New York City is now 3 years greater than the national average and 3 years greater than it was a dozen years ago. So if you have friends who live in this country outside of New York City, and if you really love them, I can't guarantee everyone will live 3 years longer, but I can guarantee that on average they will. So just move them to New York. Seriously, this really is a movement to save 1 billion lives by the end of the century, and all of you are helping to drive it forward. And as much progress as we're making, as I said before, we still have an awful long ways to go. We know what actions save lives. We know how hard the tobacco companies are fighting them. As they've lost ground in the US and in Europe, they've set their sights on the developing countries. They're pouring advertising dollars into those countries to get more people hooked. And that's why when you see some small country, 3 million people like Uruguay stand up and do what's right, you just have to step in and help them. Those are the leaders. They do more than we do here in the big countries. Our public health team has done a phenomenal job. They share in the credit tonight. I wanted to recognize Michael Clegg, Dean of the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins. He and his predecessor, Al Summers, who really got me interested in public health when I was chairman of Hopkins, and he pointed out it was made more sense both economically and from a compassionate point of view to prevent people from getting sick than try to cure them afterwards. I'm not sure our medical school and hospital was happy about that, but it's the public school of public health that's named Bloomberg and not the medical school that's named Bloomberg. So let me once again thank the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and all of you here tonight. And I particularly want to thank our youth advocates for being honored tonight. You should keep up the great work wherever you're sitting, someplace around here. This is a battle for people's lives, and together it is a battle that we can win. So have a great night, but do me one favor. Just before you turn out the light tonight, that last look in the mirror, look at that person. You should be very happy to see that person. That is you, and you are making a difference. Thank you, and incidentally, thank you for the overtop runner.